Hello, folks. My name is Dre. I'm a customer success engineer here at MoveWorks, and I'll be our host for today's weekly webinar session. A quick preview of the upcoming sessions that we'll be having in the coming weeks. Next week, we'll be discussing Concur expense report approvals. Sorry, rather, not next week, but 2 weeks from now. Next week, we will be skipping. And then the following week on September 11th will be the Ariba purchase requisition approvals. But today we'll be discussing Workday upcoming birthday lookups. And so we'll go over this use case. I actually want to give a little bit more context about how I've gone about doing discovery for the APIs on this use case. And then we'll spend some time during the Q&A session answering any questions that you have that come up during this call. So please hold any questions you have until the end. We will certainly get to those and leave ample time to discuss. Let's go ahead and jump, though, into Workday upcoming birthday lookups. This is a fairly straightforward use case. Simply, we are going to be querying a user's Workday worker profile for their next upcoming birthday. Now, next upcoming birthday is sort of a standard field that is available in Workday on the worker profile. So it's fairly straightforward for us to query it using a WQL query, get back that information in a JSON format, have Creator Studio then process that, and then provide that to the end user. So the first thing I want to look at is the general process that happens. I kind of gave an outline a moment ago, but basically we want the end user to come to the bot and say, what are some upcoming birthdays that will be taking place soon, or something along those lines. That should trigger a queries workspace because we're having the user come to the bot and is making a query, what are some upcoming birthdays. We don't need any additional information. We can then make a call to Workday, again, using the data API. We're going to construct a WQL query, which will then return the information that we're looking to have. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I want to show, again, the APIs that we're sort of using in the general process of how I've gotten here, because I think there are some interesting tools that Workday provides here for us. So bear with me 1 second as I pull open my tool here. And I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to Postman today. I'm going to actually spend quite a bit of time in Postman, or at least a little bit. So the first thing that I wanted to show is just in general, we're going to use a Workday environment. I'm going to go ahead and generate a new token, and then we can go ahead and go to our data sources. So Workday provides 2 APIs that I think are particularly helpful for today's use case, and that would be data sources as well as data. Data in this case is going to actually query the table that we are looking to get data from, whereas data sources is going to tell us what is available. So you can see here that data sources provides a URL parameter for search string, which allows us to search for example, workers. So today I want to get data from the workers table, about workers, I should say. Maybe I'm not sure which table I want to pull from. In this case, I want to pull from all workers. This is probably going to be true for you as well, but again, maybe you have something like Zoom workers or something more specific that you want to use instead. So the next step then, once I know the table that I want to query from, I'm going to go ahead and copy this ID and then go to data sources and again, basically do a new data sources API query, but this time instead of just the data sources endpoint, it's data sources / and then the ID of the data source that I want to query fields for. So this is going to allow me to see which fields are available in the worker or all workers data source. You'll notice that there are a total of nearly 4,000 fields that I could choose from, and only a handful come back. So again, I'm going to use this search string query parameter, and I'm going to look for some information. So one example would be birthday. What kind of information can I get about birthday on this user or on this table? And there's all going to be all sorts of different kinds of birthday-related fields. So in this case, there are 7 total. And we have worker age in years at last birthday. We have birthday subject. I'm not quite sure what that is. Date of worker's last birthday. And then what we want today is most likely date of worker's next birthday. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And we'll just know, we'll basically write this down as a field that we want to query in our data call later. The other thing that we need is basically how do we address the user? So some kind of identifier. And in this case, I like to use, maybe a preferred name of some kind. So let's go ahead and search the search string for preferred name. And I can see that we have a field here called preferred name in general display format. Again, I'm going to go ahead and copy this value, this alias, and we will use that in our data query. So now that I know how I want to query from the worker table, the all workers table, excuse me, for a worker object, I want to get the preferred name in general display format, and I want to get the worker's next birthday. So finally, I'm going to go, and this is the API call we'll construct in Creator Studio, and we'll look at that in a moment. So here I've gone ahead and configured a data query. I've set limit to 5, offset to 0. Now, the reason for this is when I'm constructing my query in Creator Studio, I don't want to get every single birthday that's coming back. You would get basically one for every employee, but maybe I just want 5, just 5 birthdays that are coming up. And then offset 0 means I don't want to do any pagination yet, although it is paginated. So what I mean by that is I just want to grab the first 5 that it can find. And then my query here is a WQL query, and you can see what is happening here. So I'm saying select from the worker object. I want to get these attributes. So basically select from all workers, which is the table from the data source we were describing. We want a worker object, and specifically we want the fields on the worker object, CF date of worker's next birthday, and then preferred name in general display format. Again, these are the fields that we queried from the API call on this tab. Once we do that, you can see the return here. We're going to get the date of worker's next birthday, as well as the preferred name in display format. And that is going to be all we need to construct our API call. So from here, I can go ahead and move to Creator Studio. So let's do that. And you can see I have a queries use case begun in this tab. So I've got it named, lookup upcoming birthdays, and I've given it a little demo tag so we know that this is a demo. And then a short description, query Workday for upcoming birthdays, just describes exactly what this use case does. So I'm going to go ahead and press next. We're going to choose a system. In this case, we'll select my Workato connector. We'll go ahead and press next. And then we construct the API. So the beauty of Postman here is that we can essentially just copy things from here and then move that to our configurations in Creator Studio. So first, I want to set the API endpoint path to be, again, matching what we have in Postman. So it's going to be API, WQL, V1, main capital, underscore GMS4 / data. This is just the data API endpoint for our specific instance, which has this name. But your instance would be something like, customer instance name, something along those lines. The next thing that we want to do is set the method to be get. This is a get API call. For more information about that, you could look at the Workday API documentation. But for this specific API call, we're doing a data get query. So it's going to be a get method. We do not need a request body. We do not need headers. We do need our query parameters. So again, I'm going to set the limit to 5, offset to 0, and then our query will come straight from what we've configured in Postman and what works there. So finally, once we have all of this configured, we can go ahead and test. We should expect to get back a 200 response code. Let's go ahead and wait for this little circle thing to stop. That's how we know that the API call is finished. And then we can scroll down and just double check. So yes, we do get a 200 API response code. And then our JSON response is pretty much what we expect from our API call in Postman. Again, you'll notice there's 556 total records. We're just getting back 5. So I think this is a good time to mention, you can be much more specific with your query. Of course, WQL is sort of a handy query language, just like any SQL-based language. And so we can say from all workers, perhaps, where manager is the user who is making the request. So something along those lines might allow you to be more specific and say, I only want birthdays of users who are employees of mine. Perhaps you can construct this as a query where you can enter in a particular user's name. So you can say, when is so-and-so's next birthday? Lots of configurability here because of the flexibility that WQL provides. Today, though, we're just going to keep it kind of simple. We just want to get back some birthdays. So here we go. Here are some birthdays. So once we have everything working here, let's go ahead and move on to API labeling. This is a fairly simple queries use case in the sense that we don't really need a ton of data. We really just need the birthday of the user and then who that user is. So the 2 fields that we're going to pull from, again, are going to be date of worker's next birthday. I'm going to set that as the identifier. This will be the bolded value. I just think it looks a little bit better that way. You could swap it around to be the preferred name instead. And then the preferred name I'm setting to be description. Again, you could swap that around and make that description of be the date of worker's next birthday. Definitely just a personal preference. This is how I like to have it done. Certainly feel free to swap those back and forth. There is no additional data here that we want to pull. All of this is going to be sort of what you would call like drill down information. So basically, if you ask, okay, tell me more about this user's birthday, it's not going to be able to tell you much more because there's really not much more to a birthday, right? Maybe if you were to query the user's age at next birthday, something along those lines, maybe you could have, age of the user here. Generally speaking, I don't see that be very common information that is shared amongst employees. So I would probably just leave it at date of worker's next birthday and preferred name. Finally, we can go ahead and go here. Now, you could imagine a follow-up action, perhaps, submitting a happy birthday notification to that user, or perhaps requesting, a birthday gift for that user. Again, the world's sort of your oyster here for follow-up actions. Today's use case, we won't include any follow-up actions. We'll just make this be a very straightforward queries use case. Finally, our triggering. You've seen this before if you've ever joined a queries use case webinar session. We just need to basically set up some utterances that are going to be examples of how a user might ask for upcoming birthdays. So what are some upcoming birthdays? Are there any birthdays coming up? Whose birthday is next? These are the basic utterances that I have provided. Of course, if you were going to be doing something like when is, let's add one here. When is Daniel's birthday? Then you would want to pull out the word Daniel, perhaps, and then configure that as a keyword. Of course, we did not do that in our API connection, so do not do this unless you have configured a query variable in your API connection. We'll leave it at these original three. Go ahead and press next. And finally, we have launch to selected emails. This is just for today's demo, so we can launch to just myself. But again, when you are ready to go to production, you can select launch to all users. Launch to all users is there's a secondary checkbox to just make sure that's what you mean. And then finally, when you want analytics to start tracking this use case, you can go ahead and click yes, it's ready to be launched in production. So lastly, before I move to the demo, let's just show the expected user experience. Again, a user comes to the bot, says, what are some upcoming birthdays on my team? Then makes that query, which in turn makes a query to WQL, the data API in Workday, and returns the birthdays that we expect. Let's take a look at what that looks like. You should be able to see my demonstration screen here. We'll just simply ask, what are some upcoming birthdays? This should go ahead and trigger the queries use case, lookup upcoming birthdays demo. It will then return just whatever birthdays it pulls back for us. Again, it'll sort of format that. So we can see here we have Maximilian Schneider on January 19th, Oliver Reynolds on April 10th, Teresa Serrano at May 5th, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so then we've covered the use case. We'll answer your questions in a moment if you've added any to the chat or to the questions section, the Q&A section. Before we do that, I just wanted to share some follow-up resources if you'd like to build a similar use case yourself. The first resource would be the Creator Studio Developer Certification course on our Academy. Our Academy is a collection of training modules that allow you to up-level and learn the process of building use cases in Creator Studio, as well as other parts of our MoveWorks product. That said, the Creator Studio Developer Certification course in particular is most applicable to our session today. I would highly recommend going through this, especially if it's your first time building a use case. You'll be provided example use cases to build along with step-by-step videos to actually then build along with those videos. And then finally, at the end, there's a certification course that you can take and then show a certification on LinkedIn, which sort of just shows your ability to build in Creator Studio. Finally are our documentation and developer community portals. Our documentation portals you can think of as a reference guide resource. All things MoveWorks, all things that we can do, skills, features, functionality, can all be found on our documentation portal, including tutorials and use case guides, which are step-by-step tutorials to build new use cases. Highly recommend starting there as you look into what use cases might be relevant to you and your organization. Finally is our developer community. This is a forum where you can go and ask questions to your fellow MoveWorks customers, as well as to our product managers, engineers, and folks like myself. So certainly feel free to go to the community, ask any questions, and we will be able to provide conversation and support very quickly there. All right. Well, thank you very much for everyone who joined. I wish you a great rest of the week, and we will catch you next time.